Order. Honorable Member Tambo, if you can wait a little bit, you can take a seat. Oh. Order, honorable members. Again, let me remind you, you can make interjections, but you can't drown the speaker. Secondly, honorable members, please consult your rules. Order. Consult your rules. There are certain words, phrases that are unparliamentary. It doesn't matter whether you speak them in Afrikaans or in English or in Zulu or Pedi, they still remain so. So some of you were shouting, I couldn't see exactly who, you know what that means. So please don't allow your members from your party to contest the debate, not to shout from your podium. Order. Can you please be quiet yourself? Thank you, Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me begin by greeting the Commander-in-Chief and President of the Economic Freedom Fighters and all members of Parliament of the EFF. Speaker, allow me to first express my condolences to the families of the EFF's June 16 Battalion, which passed away tragically in Freight following our commemorations of June 16. To fighters Bongakonge Mate, fighter Ntombi Ndlovu, fighter Lungani Sunday Mbata, Phumlani Zulu, fighter Thokozani Mashazi, Ayanda Khumalo, Kwalisile Sibisi, fighter Manqelo Siboniso, fighter Thuthukani Dube, fighter Siyanda Thwala, we say rest in revolutionary peace as you died on the picket lines. Let me also express my appreciation and commendation of the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, for developing the testicular fortitude to remove the Deputy Minister of the DA, who was ineffective and incompetent. And long may these removals continue. Speaker, so the Money Bills Act stipulates that the Division of Revenue Bill must be in line with fiscal framework. And we have long labored as the EFF that the budget process has been characterized by deceit. And this deceit is twofold. It is deceptive consultations that made an impression that there will be alternative revenue generation mechanisms which will be included in the budget, and we do not see them anywhere today. Furthermore, deceptions in terms of 3 ring-fenced options of austerity, borrowing, and strategic tax adjustments, which were the rationale for the generation mechanisms in the first version of this budget. The minister has now implemented all 3 of these things: austerity through numerical cuts and below inflation allocations to all departments. He has now implemented borrowing through a 1.5 billion loan from the World Bank, and he has also implemented tax adjustments through the fuel levy. Now, as the EFF, we have now introduced the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, which will restrict reckless and irresponsible borrowing from financial institutions globally, because there must be an authority of parliament that guides all loans which are conducted. House Chairperson, the EFF rejects the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill as proposed by the Minister of Finance and agreed to by the Democratic Alliance, ActionSA, Rise Mzansi, and BOSA, led by Honorable Maimane, who is also the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, because that committee has failed to fulfill its constitutional mandate. Before we deal with the contents of the bill, let us remind the people of South Africa of what took place not so long ago. When we were processing the Division of Revenue Bill that had to be withdrawn because the Minister of Finance lost the VAT court case, the committee had resolved to amend the bill, and Honorable Maimane will remember this. We had agreed that more than half of the 257 municipalities are in financial distress, with 20% of them not financially viable at all. That means they're unable to meet even the most basic obligations required to deliver services. We had agreed that for far too long, the assumption that municipalities will collect sufficient revenue to fund service delivery is false and not sustainable. The majority of our people are unemployed. The economy is stagnant, racial inequality continues to deepen, and we have more than 12 million people without work, 12 million people with no ability to pay for services, even if they wanted to. We had also agreed that the growing number of indigent households, many of whom are not even registered for indigent support, deserve automatic and unconditional access to free water, free sanitation, and free electricity. We also questioned why the National Treasury has reduced indirect grants to municipalities. Why allocate only 61 billion in direct and indirect infrastructure grants when studies and reality show that municipalities need over 122 billion? More importantly, we had agreed that there is merit in the SALGA study, which demonstrates that the deliberate underfunded mandates across all categories of municipalities are reckless and irresponsible. We had a consensus, we had a plan, we even agreed on a way forward. to amend the bill and increase allocations to municipalities that are collapsing in front of our eyes. As the EFF, we made written and oral submissions to the committee. We participated in what we believe to be genuine democratic processes that will reflect the will of the people. We propose that allocations to municipalities should increase from 9.5% to 14%. This would increase the local government share by 88.4 billion. We were specific about where the money should come from. We propose funds must be reallocated from non-essential expenditure such as ministerial imbizos, provincial events, excessive travel, catering, inflated consultancy fees, and the corrupt tender system that has become a source of looting. We emphasize that education and health must not be touched. These are essential services, services that serve the poor and the working class who cannot afford private schools or private hospitals. The committee resolved that the proposal should be assessed by the Parliamentary Budget Office so that an objective analysis could guide decision-making. Honorable Maimane, the chairperson of this committee himself, proposed that we consider Salga's model of equitable share split. We welcomed this proposal. It was a moment of political maturity and collective commitment to finding common ground. We had an opportunity to make a difference, to amend the bill and give our people water, sanitation, roads, refuse collection, and dignity. We had an opportunity to end sewage leakages in Diepsloot, in Alexandra, in Nyanga, in Kayamnandi, where the Democratic Alliance governs, in Umlazi, in Tembisa, in Orange Farm, in Soweto. But all of that was ignored just because the so-called government of national unity had already agreed to maintain the status quo, even though it was not working. Parliament has thus been reduced to a rubber stamping exercise. We are now presented with a bill that offers no solution to the fundamental challenges of local government. It is a copy and paste of failures. The equitable share formula has remained rigid, outdated, and fails to respond to the current needs of our people. It continues to favor historically advantaged municipalities and ignores those deliberately underdeveloped by apartheid and neglected by democracy. There's no urgency in this bill, no emergency plan to intervene in dysfunctional municipalities, no special allocation for collapsing rural towns where raw sewage flows into rivers, where people walk for kilometers to collect water from a borehole shared with livestock. There's no consideration of youth of this country, young people who could be employed through municipal programs. This bill is a betrayal of the working class and we reject it as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Patebe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I rise to deliver
Order,
our
Honorable Member,
declaration.
let's allow the IFP to make the statement.
On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I rise to deliver our declaration on the Division of Revenue Bill, a pivotal instrument in the machinery of cooperative governance. This bill is a legal embodiment of our constitutional imperative to distribute national revenue equitably among the national, provincial, and local spheres of government. Yet, while the intention of equity is noble, the IFP must express our concern that the application often falls short of addressing the entrenched inequalities that persist in our communities, especially in historically neglected rural areas. We note the allocation outlined in Schedule 1 through 3, which intend to deliver predictability, transparency, and financial autonomy across all spheres. However, we remain concerned that equitable does not always translate to just or transformative for the poorest of our citizens. Allocations must go beyond formulas and factors in historic deprivation, demographic shifts, and real-time socio-economic needs. While the bill provides for conditional allocation in Schedule 4 to 7, including those for disaster relief and infrastructure grant, we call for better oversight and a review of whether these conditional grants are genuinely enabling or whether they are hindering local developmental flexibility. Further, the withholding and reallocation powers vested in the National Treasury raise concerns of over-centralization of potential politicization. Fiscal discipline must not come at the cost of democratic decentralization or developmental mandates, especially where the failures are systemic and not due to negligence at the provincial or municipal level. Honorable Speaker, while we support the principle of fiscal responsibility and the objectives of transparency as outlined in Chapter 4 and 5 of the bill, we believe strong emphasis must be placed on building capacity within provinces and municipalities, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal and other rural provinces, to absorb, utilize, and account for funds. We call for the National Treasury to prioritize funding for infrastructure, planning units, and audit remediation in these areas. Moreover, we are concerned that the bill's approach to disaster relief, particularly in light of Schedule 7 allocations, is reactive rather than proactive. Our provinces have experienced the deadly consequences of climate disasters. The funding mechanisms must therefore be reviewed to allow for pre-disaster planning and community resilience building. In conclusion, while the IFP supports the procedural passage of this bill, we do so with reservations. We call for a more needs-based and developmental approach to the division of revenue, one that is informed not only by mathematical formulas, but by the lived realities of our people. We urge this House and all spheres of government to use this opportunity to close the gap between policy intent and practical implementation. Let us not allow the ideal of equity to be reduced to an exercise in spreadsheets. Let it become instead a true instrument of justice, development, and hope. The IFP accepts. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mackenzie.
Speaker, before
Order,
when
honorable
the
member.
honorable member of the Economic Freedom Fighters was standing here speaking about the June 16 battalion, some of us there were people laughing. I don't like the EFF, but in death, we should have respect. We should respect people and not make fun when they speak about members that has passed on. Those are South Africans that has passed on, and we should show respect. And we shouldn't laugh when somebody mentions the death of their members.
Thank you, honorable member. You may proceed.
The
Order.
Patriotic Alliance.
Order, honorable member. I think the point that has been raised, indeed, though it may not have been a point of order, but it's important. I think when order, honorable member, we should accept. If we didn't hear them, it's okay. But I think the point made, it's important for all of us to recognize. Can we allow the speaker then to continue with his intervention?
Thank you, Speaker. Minister of Finance, the Patriotic Alliance, the fastest growing political party, judged by election results, support the division of revenue bill. We also want to congratulate you. You have been going through what we would say the most. You've been called names, you've been insulted, but you remain resolute to find a solution. You are one of the best finance ministers this country has produced. This bill, budgets has collapsed countries. They've collapsed different governments. But this budget, at the end of the day, we are here today and we are going to pass it. It shows that we are not a Mickey Mouse government. We are a government with a plan. That's why I would like to caution the previous speaker. There is no DA or PA or ANC minister in the GNU. There is cabinet ministers in the GNU. We should desist from wanting to claim easy victories. We are appointed as ministers. When I was called by His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, he didn't say PA minister. He said, Honorable Gayton Mackenzie, would you like to serve in my cabinet? I said, you will not understand. You've not been called. Many years from now, you will get that call. A bandit was called before you. The president looked at the list of all the parliamentarians we can call. Do you know what it says about you? When the president goes past you and he looks for a bandit there,
Honorable
and he says you must be
member.
a minister.
Order, honorable member, please
So
come,
one day you'll get a call.
come back to the subject for debate.
Oh. Minister, we support you. In conclusion, then, Speaker, talk to your people there. Stop this one.
Order, no, I can't stop the watch.
Oh.
Can you please continue with your debate?
I cannot jump off here without telling the honorable minister that spoke here. No, who spoke here. Just say honorable bandit. You can say bandit, but you must put honorable. There's no such thing. You cannot come here and say Cape Town is the best run city in the world, while 3,000 colored people die every year in the best city in the world. The people of Mossel Bay, where the DA was controlling for 19 years, eventually got tired last night and they voted for the Patriotic Alliance. Salute.
Order, honorable vessels. Honorable vessels. Order, honorable members.
The Honourable Speaker, when one talks and
Order,
debates-
honorable members, can we please order?
Honourable Speaker, when we debate the division of revenue, it's obviously impossible not to talk and reflect on the state of municipalities in South Africa. And there it is, unfortunately so, that one cannot differ from the Honourable Tambo. He made the absolute correct analysis of what is going on. And that is that we don't have efficient and sufficient funding on local government level, but that there is a lot of unnecessary spend in the other spheres of government, and that there is a lot of money that can be saved and used to the benefit of the communities out there. But, Honourable Speaker, when one does go and look at the last financial year, you see that of the conditional grants that were transferred to municipalities, only 29% of those conditional grants were spent. More than 70% were transferred back, were unspent. So the solution, Honourable Tambo, is not more money, but is a complete overhaul of our local government system. The Honourable Wakelin must be reminded of the Afrikaans saying, "In 'n blinde wêreld is een oog koning." It's very easy to say that certain municipalities are performing better, but in reality, we must be honest that no municipality in South Africa is servicing all the members of the communities that they are supposed to service. We have a problem, and people out there are suffering. Be it a DA-run municipality, be it a coalition-run municipality, be it an ANC-run municipality, people are suffering. The members of our communities are not getting the basic needs addressed. The Constitution of South Africa in Section 153 says that a municipality should prioritize the basic needs of the community. Not only certain members of the community, but all the members of the community. We are not doing that. And the solution does not lie in appropriating more money to municipalities, because they don't spend it, or when they spend it, it's being stolen, eaten by fat cat contractors, eaten by entrepreneurs, and does not reach the communities out there. Die agbare Mohali moet baie versigtig wees. Die gesig van armoede ken nie kleur nie. Mense in Suid-Afrika ly, en ons moet ophou om te sê dat dit die verlede is of dat dit swart is, want dan gaan ons nooit die werklike oorsake aanspreek en die mense se lewens verbeter nie. Ons moet begin kyk na die toekoms. We need to be future driven and look at a future where we can address the needs of our different constituents. That does not mean to say, and cannot ever mean, and won't mean to say that the face of poverty is black. You won't solve the problems then. The people of South Africa are suffering. We need real solutions. We need to debate those solutions. We need a rehaul of our local government system, and the white paper on local government is a step in the right direction. But it can't stay a white paper. It needs real plans and real solutions to overall decentralize and really get service delivery and compliance so that the people of South Africa, their basic needs are addressed. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Priestley.
Speaker, the Division of Revenue Bill before us allocates 2.3 trillion between national, provincial and municipal spheres of government. Of this amount, a whopping 425 billion goes towards interest payments. The net amount available for distribution after interest is 1.9 trillion. The sad and painful truth is that this amount should have been significantly higher had South Africa experienced economic growth in line with the rest of the world, emerging markets and the African continent. That kind of growth would have enabled more police stations and more police officers, more schools and more teachers, new and improved hospitals with more doctors and more nurses, increased funding to municipalities to fix collapsing infrastructure. The list goes on, but broadly it would have meant an improved standard of living for all South Africans. However, failed economic policies has consistently stifled growth. These very same failed policies are now being perpetuated by the so-called government of national unity. As long as this continues, it is improbable that the amount available for distribution across the spheres of government will improve anytime soon. The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over and over, whilst expecting a different result. That best describes the economic policy trajectory under the GNU. Uninterrupted madness. South Africans deserve better. With limited funds to distribute, it is critical that every cent is spent effectively and efficiently. Yet due to rampant corruption, incompetence and waste across all levels of government, this is simply not the case. In this regard, ActionSA supports the Finance Minister's stated intention to establish a spending review committee to identify wasteful, inefficient and underperforming programs. ActionSA has already volunteered to participate in this committee, and we look forward to receiving confirmation in this regard. Speaker, one of the greatest constraints on economic growth and one of the biggest threats to service delivery is the dismal state of our municipalities. As the Executive Mayor of Tshwane, ActionSA's Dr. Nasipi Moya, the Siya Khaleesi of South African politics, the Tender Bavuma of South African politics, the mayor who unites rather than divides, the mayor who stands up for the entire community, puts it well, and I quote, "Local government is meant to be the level of government closest to the people, but municipalities have become the places closest to despair." Speaker, eThekwini, my home, is rapidly becoming a failed municipality. With water losses of 57%, over 615 million litres of water goes down the drain daily due to leaking pipes. Residents face constant water shedding and shortages. The sewage system has also collapsed, with raw sewage flowing into rivers and onto our beaches. eThekwini, with its beautiful coastline, vibrant communities and warm winters, should be a tourist hotspot. But thanks to the water, sewage and other crises, tourists are avoiding the city. ActionSA therefore calls on the National Treasury to hold municipalities to greater account for the funds they receive. It cannot be business as usual, because soon there may be no businesses left in some municipalities at all. They are indeed becoming a place of despair. Dr. Moya has shown what good leadership can achieve at the municipal level. We must now find another 256 Dr. Moyas to bring meaningful change to municipalities across South Africa. Speaker, in conclusion, ActionSA supports the Division of Revenue Bill. It is imperative that the budget process is not delayed any further and funding flows to the different spheres of government. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart. Order, Honourable Members.
Chairperson, the ACDP welcomes the increase in funding for economic infrastructure, taking the allocation of the medium term to 1.03 trillion. This will, we believe, stimulate economic growth and lead to increased revenue collection and jobs. Job creation is what we needed. Now, the additional funds over the medium term will also ensure frontline services, including what is estimated 800 doctors, 4,000 police officers, and additional nurses and teachers. And this is to be supported. Now, as we know, when one deals with the Division of Revenue bill, National Treasury allocates almost half of the nationally raised revenues to 9 provinces and 257 municipalities. And we are in agreement with previous speakers, the Honourable Tambo and the Voter Vessels, who agreed on the challenges at municipal level. And in this time of coalitions, one wonders whether that agreement was not going to lead to a coalition and whether it would be called the EFF Plus as a new party. But let's work together to find the solutions in our nation. Now, speaking about the Auditor General's
Order, Honourable
report.
Members.
Speaking about the Auditor General's report, it's very clear that municipalities, and that is why in a light-hearted fashion I referred to those speakers that highlighted the challenges in these regards, and it is disgraceful that Johannesburg, a leading financial hub in Africa, is suffering from crumbling infrastructure, declining public trust, pothole-ridden roads, aging buildings, and crumbling public transportation systems. This shocking state of affairs is not only pertinent there, but elsewhere as well. And the AG has called for urgent interventions, yet her pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Little has changed, and local governments are in a dire state. This is perhaps, and lack of service delivery probably also explains why increasing number of households are not paying their bills. This has resulted in debts owed to municipalities rising to 416 billion rand. And so what is needed when local government elections is looming is a new type of political leadership. Those that understand stewardship of state resources and are servant leaders, not there to loot and steal. The ACDP, the African Christian Democratic Party, believes we need to apply the Jethro principle in electing councillors, those that are competent, able, God-fearing, and who hate dishonest gain. Exodus 18, verse 21. Just think how we could turn around our towns and cities with such councillors. These are the ACDP's candidates that we will present for the next elections. Despite our reservations and the concerns about local government, the ACDP will support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The committee's report states that after debt service costs, the contingency reserve and provisional allocations, the distribution of funds stands at 48.3% to the national sphere, 42% to provinces, and 9.7% to local government. Of course, the debt service costs are significant, but the report also mentions that part of our fiscal strategy is to pay down the capital debt to reduce interest payments after this fiscal cycle. I want to say, Honourable Finance Minister, I think you know that no such will happen. This undertaking is made each year, and the following year we break our own word. But I'm glad that the conversation about the equitability of the distribution to local government, to provincial government and national government is taking place. But I'd also like to ask that we line up the things properly. Part of what the government, the Treasury, and other areas of government rely on for policy making is Statistics South Africa. It is chronically underfunded. We are going to get to a point where they have to thumbsuck to inform the work of this parliament and the work of government. So can we please do that? Otherwise, a very critical work of working out what actually is an equitable share is going to be compromised. Several speakers have stated here that municipalities in and of themselves battle to make the right policy decisions because of this very problem. We need to sort it out. That is the first thing. The second thing is that I think we must also accept that given the state of administration in municipalities, we are throwing good money after bad. And one of the things that's really important for us to do, and I'd like to appeal to the Honorable Minister Hlabisa of Kokta, that we need to think about what the correct package of reforms for local government is going to be, so that we do not increase allocation and give him more money to the same municipalities that misallocated it, that waste it, run parallel administrations, and so on. And then we also ask the Auditor General to fix the problem. That is not going to work, and that is critical work that the Parliament needs to make. And the last thing that I want to talk about is that municipalities are particularly important in the context of the growth conversation. Every business is in a municipality. As they die, they drag the economy down with them. So whatever systemic interventions we make, they need in the end to drive towards local economic growth, job creation, and the kind of administration that South Africans can be proud of. We will vote for this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Schlazer Webster.
Honourable Chair, numerous speakers before me have quoted the allocation of 2.95 trillion, which is to provinces and municipalities over the medium term in this bill. And it's a sizable amount, and rightly so, because this is where citizens actually interface with the budget. It's where essential services take place, where schools, clinics, where electricity and housing are delivered. But despite the sizable allocation, the outcomes are continuing to fall short, and there's a chasm between funding and function that does need fixing. The country's most pressing crises of stagnant growth, chronic unemployment, and poor service delivery are ultimately symptoms of poor governance. And this is especially evident at local level, where the proverbial rubber hits the road. So we must be alert as a House to the continuation of the trend of allocating large sums of money with little assurance that there's performance which will follow. We can't continue a trend where money is allocated and there aren't clear mechanisms for consequence management or accountability. In local government, municipalities will receive 553 billion over the medium term, and they will remain reliant on intergovernmental transfers, which make up over 70% of their total budgets. And this structure of funding allows responsibility to be outsourced. Many people are responsible for the budget. It ends up being that nobody is actually held responsible. On governance, the Auditor General tells us that only 38 out of 257 municipalities received clean audits, and there's fruitful and wasteful expenditure, which then continues to rise. Yet, we continue to transfer large sums with no reform in return. So if we want to see growth, if we want to see particularly job creation, we can't ignore local infrastructure, specifically bulk water, roads, electricity, and we still have the implications of ESCOM, where debt is overwhelming. Municipalities owe over 70 billion to ESCOM, and this is the economic constraints which we cannot ignore. We need to be more intentional also about spatial justice, because these same areas that were historically excluded under apartheid continue to lack infrastructure today. And so we don't have in this bill any targeted reforms to change those spatial patterns. And as Build One South Africa, we continue to call for SEZs to be seen and made in townships, strategic townships in this country. Lastly, as Parliament, we have to take our oversight role more seriously. We can't authorize allocations and walk away. And so we support this bill, Chair, but we do so calling for stronger conditions for performance and a clearer framework for oversight. We thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Zungula. Order, Honourable Members, order.
Thank you, Chair. The Division of Revenue must fundamentally respond to the challenges facing the country. Taxes should be transformative and redistributive. Doctors are leaving the country. The remaining doctors are overworked, and sometimes they need to complete triple shifts as the hospitals are understaffed. In some hospitals and clinics, there's shortages of doctors, nurses, and medical equipment. Children are dying of fake foods that are sold in some establishments, and the environmental health practitioners that are trained to prevent such are sitting at home. Communities are overwhelmed by criminals, and yet community policing forums are neglected and SAPS is understaffed. These are the pressing issues that need to be addressed, and the Division of Revenue must put the people first. Money must be made available to hire more doctors, environmental health practitioners, police reservists, and fund community policing forums. Given the ongoing widespread problem of companies not complying with labor laws, as we saw with the George building collapse, increased allocations to employment and labor for the sourcing of inspectors is critical. SARS turning a blind eye on the taxation in both the formal and the informal sector that is drained by remittances to China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh and other countries is a major cause of concern. We can't turn a blind eye on the fact that people come from other countries, use the infrastructure and services paid for by poor South African taxpayers. They make billions in South Africa but pay no taxes. Instead, they remit billions to their home countries. SARS must be allocated more funding to decisively curb illicit financial flows that are over 100 billion per annum. This would increase the revenue of the state by targeting the multinationals that are illicitly draining the economy. The Division of Revenue must prioritize human development outcomes, not just tick fiscal boxes. Provinces like the Eastern Cape, Limpopo remain incapacitated despite large populations and high poverty levels. While local government receives a significant allocation, too many municipalities remain dysfunctional and riddled with corruption. The money allocated to municipalities must not be a reward for dysfunction. Lastly, the municipal infrastructure grant and equitable share transfers must be linked to compliance, functionality, and performance, not for the benefit of the politically connected few, because most municipalities are known that there's certain people or a certain group of people who are committing corruption and riddling those institutions. We do not support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sigere.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC voices its heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims of the flood hit Mthatha in the Eastern Cape province. Severe flooding in Mthatha reinforces the ANC's belief that South Africa has been suffering from a shortage of adequate, essential, and climate-resilient public infrastructure, largely due a steady decline in public sector investment expenditure on capital goods and infrastructure, particularly from 2008. In the absence of quality public service structure, budget allocations are unlikely to significantly improve economic growth, education, and healthcare. It is in South Africa's interest that this House adopts the 2025 Division Revenue Bill, which aims to prioritize investment in public infrastructure projects on three fronts. Firstly, the government will spend 1 trillion on public infrastructure projects over the next 3 years, of which 33 billion will be funded through this bill over the 2025 medium-term expenditure framework. Overall, this 1 trillion rand earmarks for investment in public infrastructure projects in energy, water, and logistics supports President Ramaphosa's remarks in the 2025 State of the Nation address, which says, I quote, "Government will spend more than 940 billion on infrastructure over the next 3 years." More interestingly, a trillion rands government investment in public infrastructure projects demonstrate a consistent willingness of the ANC-led GNU in fulfilling the objectives of the National Development Plan, whose critical actions include, among other things, public infrastructure investment at 10% of gross domestic products, financed through tariffs, public-private partnerships, taxes, and loans, and focus on transport, energy, and water. Secondly, the ANC has always been critical that municipalities contribute next to nothing in infrastructure development and maintenance from their own budget due to operational inefficiencies, which are mispricing of services, unaccounted for losses, and under collection of debt. In fact, the inability of municipal revenues to match required expenditure for infrastructure contradicts the 1998 White Paper on Local Government assertion that municipalities need to have access to adequate sources of revenue, either own resources of intergovernmental transfers to enable them to carry out the functions that have been assigned to them. This explains why low levels of investment in infrastructure at local government correspond with poor service delivery, as inadequate municipal revenues resulted in inefficient infrastructure, which is a barrier to quality service delivery. Given the challenges in raising additional finance for infrastructure, this bill allocates 17.4 billion to the municipal infrastructure grant to assist 216 municipalities with infrastructure issues. Further, this bill allocates 15.3 billion to the budget facility for infrastructure to leverage private finance to support infrastructure in critical areas like hospital infrastructure, transport and logistics, and water. The non-revenue water projects in eThekwini Metropolitan Municipality, the My City Phase 2A project in the city of Cape Town, the Integrated Bulk Supply System Interventions project in the Solplaatje Local Municipality, and the Water Security Program in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality are some of the BFI-funded projects for the 2025-2026 financial year. Additionally, this bill allocates 3 billion to the Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant, which is intended to fund social components of regional bulk water and sanitation projects approved by the Department of Water and Sanitation. Finally, this bill allocates 2 billion to the Integrated National Electrification Program of municipalities aimed at electrifying households to the ESCOM grid. While this is important, most low-income households are forced into using polluting and unsafe sources of energy because they cannot afford to pay the amount of electricity they are connected to. It is in this regard that legislated oversight departments of the free basic electricity subsidy must ensure that millions of low-income households have access to this subsidy that the ANC promised them more than 20 years ago. Thirdly, like municipalities, province face spending and revenue pressures resulting in infrastructure deficit, given that public investment is the only viable and equitable way to increase public infrastructure investment. This bill allocates 15.3 billion to the education infrastructure grant, reflecting a 9.2% nominal and 4.9% real increase. The EIG is aimed to tackling school infrastructure backlogs amid the current need to address persistent school challenges, including schools without access to water, electricity, or adequate sanitation, unsafe and inappropriate pit toilets, overcrowded classrooms, and crumbling buildings. Adequate education facilities achieved through the EIG support the government in its effort to roll out public employment programs like the teacher assistant programs in basic education, which is allocated 1.2 billion in this bill for the 2026 financial year. More importantly, the EIG is not only instrumental in the implementation of the Basic Education Law Amendment Act, which is the BELA Act, but it is also funded to addressing skill shortages in labor markets so that public education can produce the skills that employers require. This bill also allocates 7.2 billion to the health facility revitalization grant. While this allocation is a 2.8% reduction after adjusting for inflation, indicating a sustained erosion of public investment in the health sector, it nonetheless provides an important opportunity to provincial governments to begin maintaining health facilities and investing in climate resilience infrastructure for the increment universalization of public health as envisioned in the National Health Insurance. Without a doubt, the ANC supports this bill as puts decent work on its agenda to be sure it allocates 23.4 billion for the 2025 Public Service Wage Agreement and carry through cost. The Public Service Wage Agreement is in line with the
Honourable Member, your time has now expired.
to
Thank
create
you.
many jobs. I thank you.
Is there a speaker from Al Jama? The NCC? The Honourable Mashlatsi?
Thank you, Chairperson. Otto, Maafrika. The United African Transformation cannot support this bill. Because the bill fails the rural poor, it fails the unemployed youth, it fails the spirit of the Freedom Charter, which declared the people shall share in their country's wealth. This bill must be measured not only by its technical soundness, but by its moral and developmental impact on the lives of our people. Let us start with the reality on the ground. South Africa remains one of the most unequal societies in the world. The rural provinces like the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, and Limpopo continue to suffer under the yoke of underdevelopment, while the metros are drowning in service delivery backlog and collapsing infrastructure. The current bill, while prescribed in its logic, failed to account for its deep historical inequality that persists for 30 years in democracy. The formula used by the National Treasury, based on population size, basic services, health, and educational indicators, does not sufficiently weigh the legacy of apartheid spatial planning. For example, municipalities serving large informal settlements such as Buffalo City or Emfulweni receive allocations that do not match the scale of their infrastructure deficit or social demands. This entrenches the cycle of poverty and resentment. Honourable members, this bill must also be read in the context of ongoing fiscal austerity. Provinces are being asked to deliver more with less, fewer nurses, fewer teachers, and reduced budget for agriculture and rural development. How do we speak of equitable division when public sector vacancies are frozen and local government cannot maintain roads or pay ESCOM? Furthermore, the bill ignored the constitutional imperative of corporate governance. Local government are the face of democracy for our people. Yet they are being treated as the lowest rung in the budgetary chain. We need a radical shift towards revenue justice. Ensure that resources follow the needs, not the numbers. In the spirit of Pan-African and Ubuntu principle, we say budget that stifles the periphery will eventually bleed the center. We must build and development a state rooted in social justice, redistribution, and grassroots empowerment. We demand a few fiscal command compact, one that transforms,
Honourable
not
Member,
maintain.
your time has expired. Thank you. I now recognize the Honourable Minister Steenhuisen.
House Chairperson, yesterday, South Africa's future was put at stake.
Order, honourable members. Order,
Shortly-
honourable members.
Shortly before the cabinet meeting yesterday, the President informed me that he intended to remove Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield as a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. I requested 24 hours to speak to Whitfield and to inform my party. However, before I could do so, just 3 hours later, Whitfield received a letter informing him of his removal. The apparent reason for this sudden and ill-considered decision is that Whitfield did not obtain permission to travel abroad earlier this year.
Honourable Minister Steenhuisen, will you take your seat, please? There's a point of order. Order, honourable members. Honourable members.
Chair, I rise on Rule 68. The last time I checked, we were debating the
Order.
Division of Revenue Bill. The Speaker, with respect, is irrelevant to the topic of today. Thank you.
Yes. Honourable Steenhuisen, Minister Steenhuisen, will you get back to the topic under discussion, please?
House Chair,
Order.
I'm setting out the reason why we will be voting, how we will be voting in the House today on the floor.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members. Honourable members, let's listen. Honourable members over there, can you please quiet down now? Order. Honourable members, order. May I request the Chief Whip of the Economic Freedom Fighters just to ask the members to calm down. You don't even know the reason yet. So let's listen to the debate, honourable members. Chief Whip of the EFF, can you calm down your members, please? Thank you. Thank you. Please proceed, Honourable Steenhuisen.
But the facts in this matter contradict this flimsy reasoning. In fact, on the 12th of February, Deputy Minister Whitfield had written to the President requesting permission to travel. 10 days later, he had not received a reply or any response whatsoever about the trip. Whitfield subsequently wrote...
Order, honourable members. May I ask the Chief Whip of the ANC to do the same, please? Otherwise, we are not going to get through the speech. Let's be fair, honourable members, let's be fair. Even if you disagree with what the honourable member is saying, the honourable member, in terms of the rights and the Constitution, have the right to say what he wants to say. Order. Please proceed.
Whitfield subsequently wrote to the President to apologize if he had caused offence. Again, he received no response. Then yesterday, months after the incident, and without a further word on it, the President unilaterally removed a DA Deputy Minister without even giving his largest coalition partner an opportunity to discuss it with the member or his party.
Order, honourable members.
Now, according to the President's spokesperson, this move is not part of a broader reshuffle. And there can therefore be no other conclusion to be drawn that this is a calculated assault on the second largest party in the governing coalition. But
Order, honourable members.
What makes matters worse is that this unilateral action is a result and a product of a flagrant double standard. While a DA deputy minister is removed for not getting a response to seeking permission to travel, there are members in the cabinet who are implicated in the VBS scandal and looting. There are members in the cabinet. There are members in the
Order,
cabinet
honourable members.
who, despite apparently misleading Parliament over an attempt to deploy corrupt cadres to CETA boards, remains in the cabinet. Serial underperformers and people implicated in state capture continue to sit around the cabinet table. Now, instead of being summarily fired, like DM Whitfield was, these ministers get an opportunity to submit a report to the president on their behavior. In the past, even ministers who had serious public protective findings against them were merely admonished or had their pay docked. Yet a DA deputy minister is dismissed with the flimsiest of excuses. Are the people of South Africa expected to accept that fraudsters, corruption accused and Zondo accused are protected while Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield is removed? But perhaps there's something even deeper at play here. Like all DA ministers and deputy ministers, contrary to what the Honourable Tambo said, Andrew Whitfield was succeeding in his job. He had opposed the attempt to make suspect appointments to the IDC board. He was raising uncomfortable questions about the Transformation Fund and the opportunities it provides for looting. And yes, he was asking the uncomfortable questions about the Lotto Tender Award. Now, given this flagrant double standard, one is left with no choice but to conclude that hard-working DA members of the executive are fired for fighting corruption, not for committing corruption. For being good at their jobs rather than incompetent. Now, if this situation is not corrected, it will go down as the greatest political mistake in modern South African history. And so, seeing the president is now cleaning house, I would like to suggest that he sweeps in front of his own doorstep before he sweeps in front of the DA's doorstep. It's Parliament. Deputy Minister for doing his job, but isn't prepared to move other ministers and deputy ministers for not doing as theirs. That is hypocrisy of the highest form, and it cannot be brooked. Now, the ball is now then in the president's court, and he must show us now that he's a man of his word. Madam Speaker, it would be very easy for a party that had been treated with such disdain from a coalition partner to vote against this bill today. But precisely because we are nothing like the ANC, the DA will always put South Africa's interests over narrow party interests. We will vote for this bill today, not for politics, but for South Africa. And
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members.
And in doing so, we will demonstrate to all of our coalition partners that when we give our word, you can rely on it, and that when we say we're going to do something, we will do it. However, this is now a moment of truth. Within the next 48 hours, we will find out if the DA stands alone as the only party that can be trusted to govern responsibly and take South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honourable member. I now recognize the Honourable Douglas. Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members. Please proceed, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, honourable members. I greet you all in the name of my Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. And I greet you in the name and in the language of the Khoi and San people, the First Nation Aboriginal people of South Africa. It says, the Patriotic Party rises to reject the Division of Revenue bill in its current form. This bill is not a tool of economic justice. It is a weapon of elite patronage. Austerity is dressed up in fine language, but the people still go hungry. Rural schools still crumble. Clinics still turn away patients. Vacancies remain, and our ancestral land still lies in the hands of a few. We are told we are being fiscally responsible by this government, but what does that mean when 426.3 billion rand, the second largest item after education, is now consumed by debt service costs? This grows to 477.5 billion by 2027 at 7.4%. Outpacing social spending, growing only at 4.9%. Our debt to GDP ratio is 77.4%, higher than most African countries, and we are borrowing just to pay interest. This indeed is economic insanity. We are a sovereign nation that owns platinum and PMGs, the most in the world. We own iron ore, oil, gas, coal, and mineral-rich land, but we behave like beggars. Our people live in poverty. Why? Because this GNU, this ANC, and this Division of Revenue budget wants to keep the status quo for the people who are beneficiaries of apartheid. They are beneficiaries of colonialism, and they are still in power today through the ANC, through the DA, in this GNU. Honorable Mayimani wants to talk about investment, but how can you talk investment without land justice? We first got to deal with land justice. We first got to take the land back. We first got to take the resources back. We got to beneficiate it, and then we can talk about investment, Mr. Chair. The DA came up here and was talking nonsense to our people. When you look at the city of Cape Town, I'm a Cape Townian. This is the worst run province. This is the worst run city. If you are a colored person, if you're a black person, this is the worst run place. You talk about clean audits. What about poverty? What about housing? Where's the jobs for our people? Where's the electricity for our people? You know, nuts for ons mense gemaak. You evict our people every day on the Cape Flats. You throw our people out of houses to make way for developers, for white developers who come in here and take our people's land, take our people's houses, and our people get stuck on the ground, on the land. We want to say, the ANC, you've moved away from the Freedom Charter. Why are you talking about the Freedom Charter? You in business and you in government with our oppressors. You are in government with the very people who took our land, who took our minerals, who took our resources and leave our people in poverty every day. You are no longer fighting for the liberation. You are fighting for the oppression of our people. We look at the municipalities are collapsing in this country. 163 of 257 municipalities are financially distressed. And let me say, most of them are run by the ANC, the DA, and its coalition partners. Yet municipal allocations grow only by 3.4%, below the projected inflation of 5.5%. 78 billion is owed to Eskom, yet no structural intervention exists in this budget, Mr. Chair. Instead of empowering local development, this bill empowers DBSA consultants and urban pilot projects with no local oversight. Mr. Chair, there's so many ghost workers. They cost us between 5 and 25 billion annually. They can go for housing. They can go for our clinics. They can save our people. But no, we are using it on consultants and we're giving it on ghost workers. So corruption is something that's endemic in the GNU. It's something that's been going on for 30 years. Julle kan nie hier kom en julle self wit smee nie. Julle is swart met julle gemors, met julle wat julle ons mense se lewens weggevat het. Julle ons mense se land weggevat. Julle ons mense vermoor. Maar nou wil hy hier kom en julle wil vir ons sê, julle is mooi en julle soets. Nee, julle het vir ons mense neergedruk. En nou staan die mense op saam met MKP. Nou staan die mense op. Ons as kleurige mense staan op. Ons as swart mense staan op. Ons as Khoisan mense staan op. Ons as Zulus en Xhosas, ons staan saam met MKP. En ons sê genoeg is genoeg. Nie meer nie. Nie meer nie. Honorable Chair, I want to say in closing, this is our land. These are our minerals. This is our people. Africa exports 100 billion rand annually in raw minerals. South Africa alone holds over 2.5 trillion rand in rare earth minerals and gas. Yet we borrow from the IMF. This is insanity. We need to nationalize our strategic minerals. We need state-led beneficiation and a new land and mineral revenue model rooted in justice, not debt. ActionSA, we are going to take things over. We are going to change things, and we're going to take
Honourable
our
Member,
people
your time
out of
is now
poverty.
expired. Thank you.
ActionSA.
Thank you. Order, honourable members. I now recognize the Honourable Galeka and Mazibuko.
Honourable Chair, it is disappointing, to say the least, that despite the total consolidated spending in the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill growing at an annual average rate of 5.4% and the lion's share of it going to social wage, there are some parties that suggest that this bill leads to austerity. Fellow South Africans, this bill is far from austerity, and any attempt to suggest otherwise is a widely inaccurate and strikingly unrealistic representation of reality. In fact, any party that is pessimistic about this bill is narrowly committed to ignorance. The GNU partners are entirely coherent, consistent, and free of contradiction about this bill. These partners are in support of this bill as it meets the socio-economic expectations of the electorate. From the ANC's perspective, Honourable Chair, we have thoroughly and seriously assessed the desirability and viability of this bill and concluded that it is compatible with our bold proclamations in the Freedom Charter and the Ready to Govern document. These two important documents envisioned an active post-apartheid democratic state with policy measures aimed at eliminating poverty and inequality and responding to the basic needs of the population. This bill, Honourable Chair, mainly reflects a clear continuity of the ANC's bold proclamations embodied in the documents I have mentioned, as it is instrumental and effective in addressing poverty and inequality. In short, this bill provides a sufficient basis of a dignified life for most black people whom we promised benefits of the ANC's better life for all have yet to materialize. Not surprisingly, this bill allocates an estimated 106 billion to municipalities to expand access to free basic services such as electricity and water as prerequisites for reducing poverty and inequality. Kulabo abangathathi ntweni. Most underprivileged households lament that free basic services like electricity and water subsidized by the government are glaringly inadequate and very probably inappropriate as they make marginal improvements in their lives. And because these basic services support the lowest standard of living, their capacity to lift low-income households out of poverty and inequality traps is limited. The ANC agrees that the concerns raised by the disadvantaged households that free basic services have been set exceptionally low for decades is certainly valid. And this is why the Department of Corporate Governance has finally confronted the fact that the white paper on local government has to be reviewed to create more fiscal space for municipalities to deliver on the constitutional mandate of the local government. As we appreciate the confidence shown by Joburg councillors in the ANC yesterday. Similarly, National Treasury is currently reviewing the local government equitable share formula so that municipalities can adequately provide for free basic electricity and water to low-income deserving families. In the interim, the bill allocates marginal above inflation increases in social grants to supplement free basic services and provide an income cushion for low-income households whose livelihoods are precarious and distressed. These above inflation increases in social grants are informed by the ANC's key priority of reducing poverty and tackling the rising cost of living in 2025, articulated in President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in February this year. These above inflation increases in social grants, while welcome, are not meaningful fiscal buffers for abantu abahola kancane. This is because the fuel levy, whose inevitable consequences harm low-income households, makes above-inflation increases in social grants woefully inadequate. This is why President Ramaphosa emphasized in his 2025 State of the Nation address, Kawai City, I quote, "Our most urgent task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the lives of all South Africans," close quote. Whilst the President's emphatic call to grow the economy is a step in the right direction, National Treasury forecast of 1.4% GDP growth in 2025 will further destabilize social grants as the primary source of income for low-income households. Hence, the ANC urges National Treasury to show trenchant support for and defense of the Basic Income Grant, BIG, as it can cushion low-income households against precarity and help them improve their circumstances. Of course, it is impractical to roll out a universal BIG that covers both adults and children, which is especially important in South Africa, in which the child support grant, while it is increased above inflation in this bill, is the far cry from meeting children's basic needs and basic food requirements, as it remains below the lower bound poverty line of 796. While, of course, there is a strong moral case for child support grant to be pegged to the lower bound poverty line, National Treasury is not in a sound position to make significant increases in the child support grant due to government's multiple competing priorities in a limited fiscal space. But to say there is no fiscal space for increases in the child support grant is not to say it is not possible. The ANC remains committed to Freedom Charter, which pronounces that, I quote, "Rent and prices shall be lowered, food plentiful, and no one shall go hungry." Hence, allocations to the National School Nutrition Program, NSNP, in this bill remain unchanged from the March budget at 10.3 billion, reflecting a 5.3% nominal and a 1.2% real increase after adjusting for inflation. Even though hunger and food insecurity remain at distressingly high levels, the NSNP prevents over 9 million children from low-income households in nearly 20,000 schools from going hungry, and thus help curb worsening food insecurity in the country. We talk facts. While the fuel levy hike risks absorbing much of the NSNP's marginal budget increase, thereby limiting its reach and impact, National Treasury should consider mobilizing revenues sustainably without externalizing the cost of fiscal consolidation onto low-income households. Last year, the ANC-led GNU signed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, which is pivotal for ensuring that education is accessible and inclusive for all South Africans. Amongst other things, this act makes grade R compulsory, and this is an important intervention which can break away from the legacy of the racist and willfully neglectful Bantu education system that has equipped the vast majority of citizens with nothing. to make this act count and ensure that its capacity for transformation is not blunted, this bill increases early childhood development allocation by 2.9 billion from 10.6 billion in the 2024 financial year to 13.6 billion in the 25-26 financial year, marking a significant 27.8% year-on-year jump, which is the largest investment ECD has ever received. An additional 10 billion over the 2025 medium-term expenditure framework will be allocated, other things equal, to raise ECD subsidy from 17 to 24 per child per day, to extend coverage to 700,000 more children, with subsidized enrollment expected to grow from 800,000 to 1.5 million during 27-28 financial year. Honorable Chair, these numbers speak volumes where the naysayers choke on slogans. Ukukhuluma kuchip ukwenza dololo. In conclusion, the ANC and its genuine partners in the GNU stands united. We will not allow our developmental state to be choked by right-wing scare tactics. No,
Honourable Member, your time is now expired. Thank you.
To hijack our message of hope. Amanda.
Order, honourable members. I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Kushushu. Ngiyatshisa ndawo. Let me start by saying what this bill is about. What this bill is about. I've listened to everybody what's been saying, but what the bill is about fulfilling a constitutional obligation of dividing a national raised revenue vertically between the different spheres of government and horizontally among the differences. What it does? Vertically between the different spheres of government and horizontally. That's what it does.
Order, honourable members.
That's what Section 214 of the Constitution says we must do. That's exactly what we're doing today. Very few colleagues try to comment. I know in the context of elections, people get cash up and start dealing with the elections. We have to focus, put our minds around that. And say, what are those resources now which are being allocated to the different spheres of government? Colleagues have made on the proportional differences between the different spheres of government. What is missing in the debate right through? Somebody says we don't have doctors, doctors are toiling and so on. But what we're doing in this budget, we're exactly funding those doctors. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing by passing this bill. By refusing to pass it, by the way, and make the noise about doctors that are doing, we are refusing us to fund those doctors. Your action must match what your aspirations are. If your aspirations, you want those doctors and teachers to be funded, then vote for the budget. So that's what we're talking about. What this budget also talks about, there's some colleague who talks about the SRD grant, which again, I've been telling to people that part of the difficulty is that we must begin to understand how the budget process works. We said the SRD it may not be reflected over the medium term. It may not be reflected, but is budgeted for. Why is it not reflected? Again, I must repeat this thing. Government has got a committee chaired by Honorable Math, which is looking at the active labor market policies. How do we consolidate those programs? For instance, the World Bank published a documentation which says, for instance, on the skill side of the active labor market, it's scattered all over about 10 departments. We need to consolidate the active labor market policies into one profile. And social development, this grant is part of those. What? Let me do a definition of what active labor market policy consists of. Theoretically, it consists of the following: social assistance, social insurance, and public employment programs and any related issues. That's what government is going to be dealing with, and that's why you may not see it, but we have explained it to it. But the problem, if you don't listen, you won't find, you won't understand. You won't understand it. So that's what we're trying to do. The Constitution enjoins us to do the division of revenue, take into account functions. Functions. And we're more than open to have this discussion. It's all very well to say, okay, a particular sphere of government must have X amount, but you must say, therefore, what are the functions that sphere of government does compared to others? For instance, there's other spheres of government whose very nature is labor-intensive. Provinces, for instance, have got high-intensive labor. Teachers, health workers, and so on and so on. What are you going to do? National has got the defense force, has got the police, has got all of those things. These are functions when you discuss, you must not discuss, you must discuss and take into account who performs which functions, what is the nature of those functions, what are the resources associated with those functions. The second set of issues, when we talk about local government, much as I agree that needs to be done in order to help local government, but we must not necessarily encourage people to do wrong things. Let me just give you an example. You don't sit in a hall like this and decide you spend money you don't have. A number of these local governments sit, 175 of them, have met, passed a resolution in a council to spend money they don't have. And then when you find that they're in a crisis, what's going to happen? That's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, one again. Because awuzuthi abantu bemosha ubaqhwabela izandla. Awuzubaqhwabela izandla. Municipalities have got challenges. We accept that. Let me just give you an example. One mayor calls me. She says, okay, I want to employ some police in my municipality. I said, by all means, that's your decision. If you have got money. She says, no, I'm still going to collect. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. You collect first and employ. Right? Listen to the story. Then August, she comes back and say, by the way, can you give us an advance on our equity brochure? We've run out of cash. I said, but if you employed the police, what would have happened? So let me just say,
Order, honorable members.
Let me just say, in the context of a campaign for elections, it's tempting to say all of these things people were saying, not talk about the realities that are confront us. And the unfortunate thing, my job requires me to be truthful. Does not require me to be, when I talk as if I'm talking in the rally. You know? So, in summary, Chairperson, what we are dealing here, we are dealing with equitable allocation of resources between the different spheres of government. It says equitable, it doesn't say equal. That conceptual framework is quite important as well. Conceptually, it says equitable, it does not say equal, because it precisely understands that functions are not the same. Are not the same. Let me conclude by saying it is easy to use a slogan called austerity, even when there's no austerity, when the budget is trying to address the basic population needs such as education and health, which this budget does. That's what this budget does. But you all fight here in these meetings. When I've got a budget, I was worried. A joiner said, oh, my Lord, my budget again is in trouble. And these ones are going to accuse me, and what's the budget? When you guys fight all over your own issues, and then I get up, my budget got tapped into these battles. I'm happy for placing South Africa above anything else. I think that's all of us. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Order, honourable members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Objection to reading the second time, no, but we object to the budget.
You object to the bill being read a second time. That objection is noted. Are there any further objections? Are there any further objections? There is no further objections. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Division of Revenue Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence.